Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Deanna.
Hi, Jocelyn.
Hello, hello. All right. Here we go. Let me pull up. So I had a few folks asking for the Amazon shopping list link that aren't in the Facebook group. I'm going to put that in here in the chat. And so this is just a list. Let me see here, Amazon shopping list. This is just a list of my favorite things that I've purchased and personally used that I've gotten off of Amazon. And so I've had folks ask, oh, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? And a lot of it I get from Amazon. So they're not affiliate links or anything. But I just made that little listing there for folks. And if you find any cool things that you want me to add to that list, definitely let me know. But yeah, so it's just it's there. And I created a QR code, so then I'll share that as well. So let me share my screen. Here we go. And then I'm gonna put the videos up here. And whoops, like this. Oh, and right on cue, there's Indigo cooing. Let me see here. But welcome everyone. My birds have been very sing-songy this morning. So if you right now you can hear Indigo cooing in the background. But if you do hear any singing or chirping, those are my birds. What is my cat doing? Sorry, Jules is trying to steal. Brian made these little breakfast wraps, and I have them on my desk. And our cat is trying to bring the plate closer to himself. Here we go. But welcome to the Urban Garden Learning Series. Every week we switch it up. We have classes, Q&As. Like today is a plant clinic. We have open forums as well. So again, you're open to share anything. Just reach out. Let me know, even if it's the day of, hey, I want, a couple minutes. I want 10 minutes, 15 minutes to really talk about my collection or something like that. Please let me know. So yes, today's plant clinic. And next week is the open forum. So if you want to think about that, let me know. If you are interested, this class is not monetized. It's free for all, will be free for all forever. But if you would like to submit a tip or anything like that, that's more than welcome. But again, not necessary. But putting it up there because folks have asked for my Venmo. I also have set up a Patreon as well. So upon request, it is there, it is live, and you can go ahead and check that out if you would like to subscribe. And I made a QR code for the Amazon wish list. So if you want to take a screenshot or anything like that, or just click on it, this will direct you to that list that I just added to the chat. Yeah, just some cool tools. There's things like substrates, pots I've bought, like squirt bottles, different types of things like macrames, a bunch of things that I just get all around for my house. Coco coir poles. Yeah, I kind of threw everything on there. And if I see things that are interesting that I'm adding to my own cart, I'll keep adding them there. And yeah, if you'd like to get in touch, info@urbangarden.eco. Definitely on Instagram if that's your preferred method of communication. And you can always check out the website, urbangarden.eco, and we're in the process of adding more content on there too. So keep an eye out. All right, so let me stop this share real quick. And I wanted to show you, so Petco, so we went yesterday to Petco to pick up crickets because we have to feed our geckos and our bearded dragon, and so all our lizards and frogs and everything. We have to feed them crickets. So we have to go to Petco every weekend. And Petco started selling plants. Now they've always sold like aquatic plants, but I hadn't seen actual like house plants, but it looks like they're really trying to push the bioactive terrariums. So if you're not aware of bioactive terrariums, so Brian and I, we have several bioactive terrariums where essentially you create a little habitat for your pet, whether it's a gecko, a frog, a lizard, anything, but it's naturalistic. And so there's different layers. So for instance, there's like a drainage layer, there's whatever type of substrate works best for that animal. So like for our bearded dragon, it's a much more drier substrate because they don't appreciate humidity. While for our frogs, there's a lot of peat and like cocoa coir, and it's very, very brown and heavy, and with moss as well to really hold that moisture in, because they need to have that humidity. But as your animal is living and eating and going to the bathroom, it builds up right in the tank, and of course you have to go in there and clean. But what's great is if you actually introduce beneficial organisms to the tank, it becomes its own self-contained ecosystem. And so we added things like springtails, which are really tiny. They hop around. You might see them in your plants that are usually kept very moist, and they eat fungus. They eat anything that's breaking down. So they're great because they'll outcompete fungus gnats. And so it's great. I have a colony that of just springtails, and all I have to do is feed them wheat germ. I literally feed them wheat germ, and they're in a little plastic container, a takeout box, that I keep on my shelf in my kitchen, so that I can remember to feed them, top it off, give them a little bit of spring water at the base, and then it's a bunch of horticultural charcoal. Super easy setup. It's super, super easy. And they just keep pumping out babies. And so what I do is I seed all of my terrariums like that. And so then I also have isopods. So roly-polies, if you're familiar with them that way, or I know that they're also called pill bugs. And so isopods, I have isopod colonies as well. And so they will eat stuff. So they're decomposers. So they're eating anything your pets kind of leave behind, any uneaten food, and even when they help break down also the waste that your pets create. And so by adding all these kind of critters into your tank, and there's more, you can add different types of mites, you can add different types of things, it really becomes its own self-contained ecosystem. And we've been doing this for the last couple years. We love it. We absolutely love it. It just makes the animals more healthier. It's wonderful. It's really, really cool to see. And I think now it's like starting to catch on. It's really, really starting to catch on. So I'm seeing more and more pet stores selling these like kits, or recommending that you do bioactive terrariums. And then now I'm seeing a lot more pet stores selling plants so that you can add them to your terrariums. So it's super, super cool. And so we were so surprised when we saw that there was a bunch of plants, and I needed to grab one at least. And this was interesting. I love Tenanthes, and they're so hard to find here. I either find a ginormous one, which I don't want a big one, or I'm like, I'll ask, oh yeah, if anyone can keep an eye out if they see one, and then when I get there, it's gone. It's just I can't seem to find Tenanthes that aren't ginormous here. So when I saw this little one, I was like, oh my gosh. But so this is the one I picked up. And this is a tenanthe. But what's cool is so tenanthe spread like they have a rhizome right here. So they spread under the substrate. So there's actually 3 plants in here.
Oh.
So it's hard to see. Here we go. We got 1, we got 2, and this one is starting here. So these, I could separate these eventually. I'll let them grow a little bit more. But apparently, with this, so it's saying that you only have to replace the water every 1 to 2 months. So let's see about that. Yeah, with I mean, the water looks pretty clear right now, but you know, we'll see. We'll see if that's the case. I'll keep an eye on it. And we'll try this out.
Jocelyn, is that container ventilated some way? It just has a
No,
lid on it.
just has a lid, but the lid is cork.
Okay.
But that's it. So I'm very curious because I mean I do have a lot of propagations that I have. Oh, speaking of, I'm gonna show you. But I do have a lot of propagations that I do have in sealed containers that I open up. So I don't know. Well, we'll see. This is my first time seeing this out and about. So
Yeah.
I'm
Interesting.
curious. Yeah. Like, okay. Well, we'll see about that. But I'm gonna show you, I think I had shown the anthurium seeds, the seedlings, a couple weeks ago, and they've been growing, and I really want to show you where they are now. But something also opened up last week, and it was, if you remember, when we got back from El Salvador, we were dealing with thrips, just thrips everywhere. And so a bunch of our plants were getting damaged with our philodendrons. They weren't dying, but they were losing their leaves, right? Because the leaves were getting damaged and our plants were like, bye, and just dropping the leaves. So we have a bunch of naked philodendrons right now. They're just sticks.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
oh.
my heart. So my pride and joy, which is my Choco, I had these giant leaves right here on my desk. These things were huge, and it lost all of its leaves, and it finally put out a new leaf. Look, it's not as big as the old leaves used to be, but it's still a nice size. I was worried they were going to be like this big. So it hasn't hardened off yet. And you can actually see on the back, maybe if the camera will catch it, this kind of pink has a nice like pink sheen on the back. Really beautiful leaf. So happy. And there is another one coming. So it's coming back, but it's very disappointing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yes. So they can come back. So if any of you have plants, especially if they're plants that have nodes, like, you know, and like philodendrons or even like a pothos, you know, something where to lose all its leaves. You know, with philodendrons, as long as the base is intact, it'll start pumping out leaves. Things like that with vines, you can chop up the vines and leave the nodes intact. And that actually encourages those nodes to start putting out leaves. And so you'll have a bunch of little plants. If you have like a long vine that just has nothing, nothing on it. But just wait. They'll come back. They'll come back. But I meant to grab the anthurium. Here we go. Look at them. So these are anthurium seeds. They're a mix. I think it's red crystallinum and magnificum, I believe. So we got 4 seeds, and now they're putting out this. I think we have 2 that have 2 leaves. Here we go. So these are little anthuriums. And we have springtails living in there. And so the springtails don't harm the plants at all. But because we're keeping this, there's leca here with some horticultural charcoal and some sphagnum moss. And because we keep it evenly moist for these seedlings, there is a possibility, right, for mold, because this is a perfect environment for mold. So to help prevent that, we have added springtails. And so the springtails live amongst all of this substrate, and yeah, they eat any mold, anything that's starting to rot, any mold. So we have no fungus gnats in here. There's nothing in here that we have to worry about. So it's a wonderful little nursery. So we don't have to worry about that. I really, really recommend springtails if you, I know some folks are just have an aversion to invertebrates, no matter what they are. But springtails really are a life changer. And the same with using, the integrative pest management, which is essentially, springtails can kind of fall under that category, because if you're using them to deter fungus gnats, but even like with the ladybugs, putting ladybugs out, that's what saved our plants. So inundating the house with ladybugs to the point where I was literally waking up and I'd open my eyes and I see a ladybug climbing on my pillow. And yeah, they came in and they annihilated everything. So they took care of the problem, and our plants are fine now. They're just in that stage where they're recuperating. So but they're getting there. They're starting to put out new leaves. A bunch of plants are starting to put out new leaves. So it's gonna be a slow process, but we'll get.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, where did you get the ladybugs?
Yes. So you can order them, but I would say right during this season, I wouldn't recommend if it's cold by you, because they can die in transit, and they usually try to do 1-day shipping, and then it ends up being about $25-$30, when the ladybugs, it's like $12 for 500. So you end up paying more for the shipping. So try to find a local pet shop, a local plant shop that sells ladybugs. And so we have a local shop here in Queens, in New York City, called Planted by Christie, and they happen to sell ladybugs. There's also, if you are here in New York City, there is a beneficial bug group as well, and on Facebook. And what we do is essentially every couple of weeks, every 2 to 3 weeks, they put in an order for beneficial insects and other invertebrates. And so this includes harder to find things like lacewing larvae, nematodes, predatory mites. I think also ladybugs. It's just harder to find critters. And you can put in, they do a big bulk order. And so, and then you go to pick it up at the Plant Corner, which is in Upper Manhattan. So, so here there are quite a few places. So, if you have a plant shop near you, and nobody sells ladybugs, you should mention, hey, ladybugs, it's a good business, because, yeah, they sell out super fast. So it's become a very, very popular means of dealing with pests, because the ladybugs aren't going to harm your plants. They're not going to harm you. Just, of course, make sure that the ones that are being used are ones that are native to your area, and not the invasive Asian species. Because if those were to get out, they can affect the ecosystem. Now, if right now it's winter, so but they can overwinter. So they can kind of tuck themselves. There are, ladybugs that will enter people's homes basically to kind of continue surviving through through the
Wow.
winter.
Wow. What is their lifespan? Like if you, on the regular ladybugs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a while. It's a while.
Okay.
So with our ladybugs, we had, gosh, so I've seen some of them. They surprise me. It's like several months later, and I'm seeing ladybugs.
Yeah.
They haven't bred for us. They haven't bred for us. As far as I have seen, because
Yeah.
their larva is pretty noticeable.
Oh,
It
oh,
looks
okay.
it looks really neat.
Yeah.
And but no, but it's a while. It's a while. I think it's a couple months, if I'm
Oh,
not mistaken. Yeah, it's
uh,
a couple months.
a good length of time to get rid of infestation, and that's really pretty good.
Yes, yes. And if you're doing it preventatively, so sometimes folks want to, and I've done this too, where I don't really have anything that I'm aware of, any pests. All my plants were like happy, and I would still introduce ladybugs. But the problem is if there isn't any pests, there's no food. So you have to make sure to actually feed them. So there is ladybug food, and it's like a powder, and it's basically like a sugar water with some nutrition, that you basically add a little bit of water, you put it on a cotton swab, and you kind of put the cotton swab near your house plants so that the ladybugs can come and drink, and then keep patrolling, but
Mhm.
it'll at least help them survive for longer periods of time instead of buying them kind of surviving like a few days or even like a week, and then there's no food. So yeah.
Well,
So
maybe that's why you weren't seeing any reproduction, Jocelyn. They're all ladies.
Babe,
How can you tell, you know?
it's reminded me of a what was that movie? A Bug's Life? Was it A Bug's Life? Yeah. And then he like turns like, who are you calling? A ladybug. Um, cute. So cute. Um, but yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's just so much better. I've had really bad experiences using like sprays. I mean, systemics are there. They're helpful. Um, if your plant is really infested, um, right now in the winter months, spider mites tend to be what really takes a hold in our house plants is spider mites, because they really like stagnant air. They like dry air. And what happens is, for those of us who are in winter or approaching winter, we tend to keep our windows closed. There isn't much air circulation. The air gets very dry. There's a drop in humidity. And so this is just wonderful for spider mites. And so during the winter months, spider mites is what really, you have to watch out for. So please, 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 check your plants, try to wipe down their leaves as often as you can. Maybe every time you water, I would pair that. That's what I do. Whenever I water my plants, I take that moment to inspect it. I take that moment to clean its leaves. If there's a dead leaf, if there's anything, remove it. So any care I need to do, I do it once the plant is right in front of me and I'm watering it. That's the only way to stay on top of potential pest infestations. If you go really long periods of not looking at your plants, where maybe they're in like a pot. So some folks are have a very practiced hand with their watering cans. I don't trust myself with watering cans, so I bottom water the majority of my plants. And so I'm always terrified I'm gonna give them too much. So so I bottom water just to stop any potential root rot murders. And but there are some folks that, like my mother, very, very practiced hand. She knows exactly how much, and especially when pots that have no drainage holes, she's great. So she can just go around and just doop doop doop, water her plants, and you're not really taking the time to really, really, really look at your plants. And so then by the time it's too late, I have my mom, my plant is covered in, what is this? And I'm like, well, that's a very bad mealybug infestation. I mean, that's been there a bit, so you kind of let that go.
Yeah.
um, so it's much better if you're watering your plant, let's say once a week, every 2 weeks, for some like snake plants, some cacti every 3 to 4 weeks. But when you do, just really look at them, just under their leaves and stuff like that. Just because, yeah, you want to make sure you catch it early. And Sherry is asking, can you overwater can you overwater when bottom watering your plants? Yes, you absolutely can. So now that, for instance, for us, now that it's winter, I actually have to water less frequently for my plants. Now this is different depending on where the plants are in the house. So there are some plants that are closer to the window, so they're getting watered less frequently. And I'm not fully saturating them. So it's a little bit less in the amount of water I'm giving them. And then the plants that are more on the internal kind of parts of the house, there are some that I have that are in a cabinet, where they have their own kind of climate control. So they don't understand that anything is different right now. They're completely blissfully unaware that we're approaching winter. And so those I water the same. But for the plants that are experiencing the they can actually feel the change and are by the window, so they're also not getting enough light like they used to. So that you're gonna lower the frequency of watering and slightly lessen the amount. And so when I'm bottom watering, yes, what I do is I don't leave them like that. So I take them, I put them into a temporary container. So behind me, this is a dining room table. And it has this little kind of, a little lip part here, which is what I put all my plants on. But it's a collapsible, so you lift it up. So what I do is I open up the dining room table and I put all my big Tupperwares. I put a bunch of Tupperwares and I put my plants in them, and I have a pitcher, and I kind of eyeball it for each plant, bottom water them, and then I continue doing what I'm doing. So if I'm doing chores, I'm cleaning, I'm cooking, whatever it is that I'm doing. And so usually it takes about anywhere from like 15-20 minutes. If it's a larger plant, it might take up to 30 minutes. And then I check and the water is gone. I will sometimes do a finger test, just to see if they were able to pull up the water effectively. If you have a plant there that's been there 20-30 minutes and it hasn't moved, like the water looks exactly the same, that could mean that your soil is basically at the point where it's hydrophobic. So it means that it's so dry that it basically creates like almost like cement. And so it can't soak up water anymore. So what you have to do, one fun way of doing is, if you have a nursery pot, is the crunching. You can just do some crunching. So that breaks it up, that opens up some air pockets, some capillaries. And so then you usually see the difference where now the water starts to come up. If you don't have a nursery pot, you can't do the crunch. You can use something like a barbecue skewer, chopstick, something like that to kind of break up the soil, but be very gentle, because you don't want to stab any and destroy any roots in the process. So you can kind of go along the edge and then kind of slowly work yourself, but kind of feel your way through the substrate so you're not destroying the roots. And then that'll help it take up water. But can you overwater? Yes. So if you are fully saturating your plants this way, because this is why I like bottom watering, because it's even, it soaks up, the substrate itself is soaking it up what it needs, and then it's nice and even dispersal of the water. Now, if you leave the plant there, so if you left it in this kind of, you put, let's say you put a lot of water, not, so basically with my plants, I kind of know how much water it takes, right? When I fill it up, I'm like, oh, I know that I just have to fill it up 1/3 of the way or half of the way, and that's more than enough. Some folks just kind of fill it up, put the plant in, and kind of walk away. And so they notice there's a change, but maybe they're like, oh, I think it needs a little bit more time, or, and now an hour passes or something like that. So usually it's not completely a loss if you forgot for an hour, but you should squeeze the pot so that, and kind of tilt your pot so any excess water falls out, anything that it's not using. But if you were to leave it there, yes, you could totally kill the plant if you do that too often. So there are some plants that great, like my snake plants, I give them one great bottom watering and then I don't touch them again for almost a month. So if you're doing it too frequently, it really depends on the plant. So if the plant likes to completely dry out, you have to let it completely dry out. And if the plant is something that likes wet feet, like a peace lily, they don't want to completely dry out, that's not gonna mind at all. But like for my philodendrons, the majority of our philodendrons we water every 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah. Synth Barnes, what temp do you keep your home? So I live in an apartment. We don't have like central heating or central air. It's like 100-year-old building. So we have a heater. We have heaters. It gets very hot in here. But usually, so right now the heat is not on. My windows are closed. So it says it is. So, and it depends. So we have gauges all throughout the house. So there's one behind me. So it says that here it's 76 degrees and 42% humidity. So it did dip. Over there is 77 and 43. Yeah, over here is 77 and 43. So it's pretty comfortable. I like it to stay between like 75 and 80. I run cold. I'm always cold. And Brian is always hot. So, so it's always a point of contention in this. Because he wants the fan going, and but yeah, I'm very comfortable right now. Now the humidity is a little low, so 43%, even 44%, that's still really low. So I will have to be turning on my humidifiers today to help offset that, because I want to keep it 50 and up in the house, not only for the plants, but also for me, for my sinuses. Just really better. It's much better. So oh no, Sid says I'd roast in 77 or 80. No. I freeze in like 60-degree weather. I'm out in like a hoodie. I get very cold. I have literally a heat pad that I keep at my feet, so it keeps my toes toasty. And it's running right now. It's literally running right now because it's all my hands and my feet are always cold. And so yeah, I literally have my feet on a heat pad right now. So yeah, no, and it's 77 77 degrees in my house. So yeah, I get very cold. Sandy, with bottom watering, do you want the top of the soil to be wet? Great question. So this depends also on the species. So if you did put a quite amount of water in there, it will soak up all the way up to the top. Now there are certain plants that would prefer not to have a lot of extra moisture at the base. So something like a ZZ plant, a snake plant. a lot of plants that have more succulent type leaves, the bases are very, very sensitive to rot. And if your substrate is very like organic heavy, so it has like a lot of peat, it's very brown, essentially. It's really, really brown. This tends to hold a lot of, it kind of captures that moisture and holds it right up against that stem, which could eventually cause rot. So if that's the case, when I'm watering my snake plants and things, I don't put enough water that's gonna soak up all of the substrate. I put enough water where the plant can kind of soak it up about half the way. So that's really where like the roots, the root hairs, the roots that are really doing the work and soaking up the water are in that area. And then the rest I just let it. So I don't let it dry. Sorry, I don't let it get that saturated. Yeah, so you can do, so it's really, that's why I use clear containers when I'm bottom watering, because I can eyeball it. It's just easier for me with the visual with the visual cues. And it's a learned thing, so if you water it and you saw, oh, it filled up all the way to the top, then you can kind of go, okay, so I'm gonna let this dry, make sure it fully dries, and then when I water it again, I'll just put a little less water and see and kind of calibrate it that way, until it's literally literally just a learning process for like my bigger pots. I tend to fill the plastic container about half the way, and for basically 6-inch pots and 4-inch pots, I fill it about 1/3, maybe a little slightly over 1/3. And yeah, that's so that they get the water, but it's not like a too much. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Alme, or Almi, sorry. My windowsill is where my potted plants lived, and I've noticed recently small flying insects, good or bad thing. It could be a bad thing. It could be fungus gnats, for one. Now, don't panic with fungus gnats. If they're little, like black, they look smaller than fruit flies. They don't fly very quickly. It's kind of like a really clumsy, slow kind of flying. With that just means that the soil might be remaining wet for really long periods of time, which is allowing for fungus to grow. And so when fungus grows, fungus gnats have food, and then they lay eggs in your soil. And then the larva is what's eating all that fungus. But the larva can't really harm large established plants, so you don't have to worry about that. But they can harm seedlings and plants that were recently propagated and have really, really tiny roots. So they're kind of establishing themselves. Because sometimes there is mold or a fungus of different types that are growing by your roots, and the fungus gnat larvae are trying to eat that fungus and might start to in turn eat those roots. So please be aware of that. So the way to deter them, one is letting your plants dry out. That's one thing. If these are species that don't want to dry out, because there are plants that do not want to dry out, they want to stay, at least with some moisture, for a nice amount of time. You can do a couple things. So one is if you put a top layer of diatomaceous earth, which is this white powder, and so you basically kind of, it looks like flour, and you just kind of put it on the very top of your soil, so it's white. And then I would recommend bottom watering after that, because every time you wet the diatomaceous earth, you would have to replace it. So you have to kind of do it all over again. But basically, this is not going to harm your plant in any way. But their diatomaceous earth are fossilized diatoms, and these are these tiny little organisms that are super sharp. They're kind of like diamond shaped. And so you can imagine when you see powder, how many millions of diatoms make up this diatomaceous earth. But when invertebrates, tiny little invertebrates, walk or come in contact with that powder, they're getting stabbed repeatedly. And this causes them to die. And so people use this as a way to handle things. It's like a non-toxic way to handle different types of infestations, like even ants. We had a couple years ago, they were doing work in front of our building, and there was a big ant colony at the base, and so they were climbing. We're on the second floor. They were literally in a line climbing up the side of the building, and they were getting into people's apartments in the hunt for a new place to live. And so there was so many ants coming into our windows, and we could not stop it. So what I did is I literally filled the little window area with diatomaceous earth so they could not pass, and I opened up the window and I put some on the ledge as well, so they could not get through. And so they literally would just, you would see them walking around walking around it. You know, and so that's a great way, because especially if you have pets, if you have kids, that, you know, if they were to eat it or something like that, it's non-toxic. Just make sure you get the food grade type, because it is something that people eat, so that you're aware. People add them to smoothies and things like that, because it's rich in silica, and so it's used as a supplement, but it's great for gardening. So that's one choice. If you're thinking, no, I don't really want to do that, that's not my jam, you can get like a zappy, or they call them zappies, or kind of a fly catcher. So for instance, so I had bought like a whole set of these, and so I only have one that I keep on in my cabinet, because since it's closed, I just, in case anything ever I rather, you know, keep the ventilation going. So I have like 2 or 3 of these extra. But basically, so you plug it in, and this is kind of, it's a fan, but it's suctioning. And so fungus gnats are really poor flyers. They really can't fly very well. And so this doesn't even have that much force. But as soon as, and you put this by your plants, and then as soon as the little fungus gnat flies by, it gets sucked up, and then it gets captured into this little thing here, and it dies. This has like a little zapper, and then it dies, and then you just throw this out. And so these are pretty cheap. I think I got this for like $4, $5.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I really, but there's more expensive ones that are like much more cool, with much like different settings and stuff. This has no buttons, it's just plug and play. But there are some that have like different power modes, and you can turn the zapper off, you can turn the zapper on, and things like that. But I got like the simplest one, because I bought like a big pack. Love it, absolutely love it. It's something to consider if you really had a big problem. Irene, how about broken eggshells? Would the sharp edges help decimate them? Yes and no. If you were to take the reason the diatomaceous earth is helping when you put it is the fungus gnats, when they come down to the surface to lay their eggs, they die, right? And then if there's any larva that's in your soil, when they try to come up, because they finish their life cycle in the soil, and now it's time for them to pupate and then become an adult, there's going to be a barrier, like kind of like sand, right? There's a barrier, and then they die. And they die. So with eggshells, if you were to do that, one, if you were to powder the eggshell, it would work similarly, but the eggshell, sometimes if it's not cleaned properly, if it didn't dry, it can start to smell, or it can start to break down and mold. It can attract decomposers as well. So yeah, I eggshells, there's a couple things that could go wrong with eggshells. So I would recommend the diatomaceous earth. And yes, I will spell it. So someone just asked me to spell it. There we go. So I will put that in the chat. Hold on one second. And I'll show you what it looks like. Let me share my screen. There we go. So this is the one I get. So the food grade earth, diatomaceous earth Harris food grade. So this is the one that I get, and it's very cheap. It's very, very cheap. Now, if you do have asthma though, I would recommend either putting on a mask when you go to open it for the first time, or just very, very carefully open it up. So don't pop it like a bag of potato chips, because that will cause, it's very fine. So it will cause a big cloud. And again, these are very sharp. And so these can agitate your lungs. So if you open it up slowly, so usually they have the zip top, so you can just unseal it and then just open it up and it's perfectly fine. You don't have to worry, but just don't do this. So if you do this, it's gonna poof, and it's just, it'll give you a coughing fit essentially. And so you just avoid that. Just avoid that. They do also come with a little kind of like a it's like this little accordion puffer. So basically you can fill it up with diatomaceous earth, and then you puff and it just shoots the diatomaceous earth to specific areas. It's like an applicator. Highly recommend this as also a non-toxic alternative. There's also so yes, Linda mentioned the yellow sticky traps. Yes, you can absolutely use yellow sticky traps. So so that you are aware, fungus gnats are attracted to the color yellow. Let me see here, sticky traps. And they come in different shapes and stuff. This will catch the adults, but this will not do anything about the larva. But this does catch the adults, so you can totally do that. If you have a thrip problem, you can get these in blue. So thrips are attracted to the color blue. Yeah. Irene, does the diatomaceous earth apply to all insects? A lot of them, yes. Really what's working on the soil. So it's not really going to help too much for other things like if it's something like for spider mites or mealies, it'll keep them from going to the soil, right? Now you can actually take like a paintbrush and kind of apply diatomaceous earth to your leaves if you have an active infestation, and it can help. But it's not the most effective way of dealing with something that is just focusing on the leaves of the plant, because it's, you know, it's something much more that's going to be laying on top of the soil. But it can help. You know, people do use it also for other types of infestations. People use them for I've heard about them being used like for like different types of pests, like even like in basements and stuff, with for like roaches and things like that, to have diatomaceous earth spread around. And it's better than putting like poison around. And again, if you have kids or pets, right, that are going to be kind of touching these surfaces or getting under a cabinet or something like that, and you don't want to worry that they're consuming something that's poisonous. Ah, good question. So Brenda asks, but how do you clean the leaves for a string of bananas or a string of hearts? Yes. So sometimes our plants, right? They're very, very, very delicate. Um, so something like I'll put here, like the string of bananas. Whoop. Let me move my images over here. Okay. Yes. So how would you go about cleaning something like this, right? It's not the easy not the easiest thing, right? Yes, totally get that. With these now, you can use something like if you were to do like a dunk, like when you're or if you have like a spray bottle to kind of give them a little clean, but then you would want to make sure that it's not during the winter months, that it's not in a period of darkness, right? Because you want this to dry out. You do not want your succulent to sit with all this extra moisture on it. So you can either have a fan on or something to really dry out the leaves after you do kind of like a dunk, or if you were to put it under your shower or in your sink. You just don't want that water to stay there. So you can do that. So that's what I do with my string of hearts. If I see that they're a little too dusty, the bigger leaves, I can kind of take my finger and just kind of wipe. I kind of dunk my finger in water and just wipe. But then they have these really itty bitty leaves. And so then I usually just kind of do a quick thing with my faucet, just under my faucet. But then I put it up on my window. I have my window open, so I'm letting it dry. The mistake is if you were to bathe your plants and then you kind of set them aside, and you let them kind of just sit there sopping wet. There's no fan, there's no way, maybe you turn off the light, it's at night, there's no sun, it's cold, so that water is not going to evaporate, it's just staying there, and so then that your plant ends up rotting. So yeah, so during the winter, you can kind of find different ways for your succulents. I like spraying also my jades and things like that. If they're really dusty, I use my hands. I literally just use my fingers. I dunk my fingers in water and I kind of dust them off. But for my tinier succulents too, I also just spray them with rubbing alcohol as well. So that's also to clean them, but also to as a kind of a preventative of any like mealy bugs or anything like that. That's the only thing I've ever had that has affected some of my succulents or mealybugs, and thankfully it's only been very like isolated cases. I've never had a big infestation of mealybugs, but the alcohol works great, so definitely recommend that. And I use 70% 70% rubbing alcohol for that. Oh, Hank, do ladybugs eat fungus gnats? No, they don't. As far as I understand, they do not eat the fungus gnats. They do eat things like mites, spider mites, thrips, mealy bugs, scale. So they do eat basically these kind of slow moving critters that live on the leaves and the stems of the plant. They're like little lions. They just hunt for them. And yeah, and then Hank, can you water the dish that the pot is in instead of taking the pot out and putting it aside into a larger pot to water? Great question. So in regards to that, one, if it depends, one, of course, on the size of the saucer. So some of them are a little bit deeper, some of them are a little shorter. Sometimes, depending on where your drainage holes are located at the bottom of your pot, it might not work. Also, if it's like, let's say, terracotta, the water is gonna gets wicked away by the terracotta, so it's not getting really soaked up efficiently by your plant. If it's ceramic, and a little bit deeper, but it's going to take you going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to keep filling it up. So that might be very annoying. Might be a little bit more annoying because you can't really know, right? Unless you stick your finger into the soil and see, okay, yeah, it's evenly moist. But that would probably take you, gosh, depending on the size of your plant, and if the saucer, maybe like a dozen times filling it up. Yeah. What I do with some of my plants is I have the reservoirs like in there. So like, oh, you can even see up here for my Scindapsus officinalis, I have it sitting in a plastic container, and then all I do is grab it and put some water in it, and then that's fine. um, and then with other plants like this guy, right? So, right, totally looks fine. Um, you don't, I have it's a nursery pot, but then what's in the nursery pot is this. And so what I do, and so here, ta-da, okay. Then what I do is I take another one of those plastic containers and I put the water in it, and I go, okay, that's a good amount. And then I fill it in, and then I don't have to worry because I know that it filled it in the right amount. And then I'm able to do that. So you can do little tricks like that. That's the only way. We have a lot of reservoirs in our house. That is the only way we are able to keep up with 300 plus plants. Is really, a lot of them are in reservoir systems. In our bedroom, the majority of our plants are in reservoir systems. In the kitchen, the majority of them are in a reservoir. We have a bunch, it's one giant reservoir that we have with our plants that we can just kind of fill, and then they soak up the water, and then you can lift them up. And I have like a little grate thing, and so I lift them up after that I see that they're nice and saturated. I lift them up, and then that just evaporates. And so like doing things like that with these guys, unfortunately, no, they're not in little reservoirs. So I do have to take these, and what I do is I have really long trays. So I put them in there, and then I put the water, and I leave them for about like 10-20 minutes. And yeah, and then they get soaked up, and then I can put them back. And in the meantime, I'm wiping down, because those are little shelves. So I'm wiping down those acrylic risers and all that, and vacuuming if I had any perlite or anything fall. And then yeah, and then I can put them right back. So this takes a really long time. So this takes about, gosh, anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to work on this.
Wow.
So but it's only about every 2 weeks, every 2.5 weeks. So it's not a nightmare, but it is a lot. So I'm very grateful for the areas that we have the reservoir systems, because yeah, we would not be able to keep up. Oh yeah, synth, that we have a regular zoo. Yes. Oh, definitely. My mother always used to make jokes that we should charge admission when people come over. Like, what we have the pets and the botanic garden here. Okay, so Brenda asks, for a 4-inch pot, would you put that in a 5-inch plastic container and then fill it about one third with water? I'm wondering how wide your plastic containers are compared to your plant pot. Great question. So yes, they're almost exactly the same size. So I purposely went to like the dollar store and got the Gladware and the Tupperware that is in different sizes, because of the pots that are different sizes. And yes, they are very close to the size of the pot. So I'm not putting this into like a giant container. I'm putting it very, very closely to what the pot is. So exactly like a 4-inch pot, and then a 5-inch container, and then filling that up. So yes, I am watering with a container that's very close in size, because then it's easier for me to to know how much it needs. If I were to put this little pot into a big container and like a big tray or something, it's harder for me. I have to keep more of a watch. I have to keep checking, making sure that I'm not I'm not drowning it with too much, or I'm not letting water stay at the bottom for too long. Yeah. But I have had plants that I had, especially when I first started bottom watering, when I was still kind of trying to figure it out. I did have tons of plants that I would think, oh yeah, I'm gonna fill it up halfway. I think that's more than enough. And so I would walk away from the plant, and I think that it soaked up all the water, so it was fine. And then the next morning I see there's still water at the bottom. And I'm like, no, it stayed all night with all that extra water. So that's when you do the, it's not always a loss. So I would say if that happens, right? Couple things you can do. One is immediately, of course, remove the plant from that water, and then you do squeeze and you do a tilt. So you want to do tilts in different directions, right? Because any water that's kind of stuck and lodged in there, you want to make sure your plant isn't dripping, right? You just want to get all that out. And then if your plant usually goes into a display pot, right, that is less oxygen exchange. And if you have so much water and you're really nervous about it, I would say to just leave it open air. And make sure you put it in a nice bright area so it can actively use that water up. Also make sure the area around where it is not too cold, is again not dark, that there's a nice amount of adequate airflow. Because if you do take it and it's super wet and then you kind of put it in a dark corner, or it's like really cold by your windowsill and you put it in there, it could freeze. So just be wary if that happens, right? You just don't want to accidentally end up killing killing the plant. Let me see here. Aaron, sometimes I see and I feel a sticky clinging bug on my orchid stems. What kind of bug is this and how do I get rid of them? A sticky climbing bug. Sometimes I just wipe it with alcohol, especially the leaves that get sticky on the surface. But after a few months, these sticky bugs on the stem and leaf surface appear again. Okay. So a couple things they could be. Now, what that sticky residue is is their waste. So this is called, funny enough, is called honeydew. I don't know why they gave it such a cute name. Maybe so that you don't realize, like, oh, they're talking basically, it's like pee. But essentially what's happening is that those insects are drinking the plant's sugar water, right? That's what they're feeding on. And then when it comes out the other end, it's really just metabolized sugar water, but it's sticky. And so you get honeydew all over your plants. And that's one great indicator that you have a pest that is attacking your plant, right? Now, another thing that honeydew could attract is something called sooty mildew. And so this is a type of fungus that, I mean, it's literally, there are fungal spores all around the air. They're just waiting to land on a good surface. But this sooty mildew, it will land and it feeds on honeydew. And so all of a sudden you get like this kind of gray, really, like, it almost looks like you put dirt all over your leaves. Good thing is it's easy to clean up. You literally just wipe it off. You can wash it off with some soap and it's fine. But it does feed on that. So be aware of that. But yes, you can use alcohol. If it's something that's really, if it's coming back, they're appearing again. So that means that maybe when you're cleaning the leaves with the alcohol, you're killing maybe some of the adults, right? But you're leaving behind the larva, or it could be just the smaller kind of lower in the life cycle, right? The babies. And so what's happening is that it takes them a little bit longer right, to mature, to get large enough for them to make a lot of honeydew, and it's like the cycle just keeps going, right? I I mean, what they can be, I mean, they could be aphids, they could be mealybugs. Mealybugs are white and they create like a little cottony type of nests, and so you see a lot of kind of white. If they're webs, they could be spider mites. Thrips, they don't leave webs, but they do kind of leave these little channels along the leaves, a lot of little dots, and they're kind of really thin. If that could be it. Aphids are much more noticeable. They look like these little and they come in different colors, but you can really see an aphid. Those are easily removed with soap and water. So to really get and what's affecting your plant out, I would say to give it a really good rinse. And so next time you're going to water the plant, I would say to under a faucet, get like a non-degreasing dish soap. So something that's not going to really harm the leaves, like Myers is a great brand. And you can actually tilt it, so you don't want to get soap on the roots. So you kind of tilt the plant, and you can get your hand a little soapy and kind of massage the leaves, try to kind of get into the little crevices, and really just kind of wash the plant, but try not to get any soap on the roots. So if it's something like aphids or like mealybugs, that will help a lot. Another potential thing are different types of horticultural oils. Now, with orchids, though, orchids do like phalaenopsis and different types of orchids, they can absorb things through their leaves, so they can be very sensitive to different types of oils. So there are specific ones you can get for like bromeliads and orchids that you can try. I can't remember any brand names at this moment. But I think the washing them off, I wouldn't recommend like a systemic, that will probably kill your orchid. But yeah, but it sounds like it's one of those kind of infestations that yeah. And they look very different, so it's hard to know what they are without a little bit more of a description of the insect itself. But yeah, so that's honeydew. That's yeah. So just I think a full wash of the plant will probably do the biggest make the biggest kind of indent on that. What are your thoughts on fertilizing? So Poonam, what are your thoughts on fertilizing during the winter? Yes, if the plants are currently in a microclimate where they're not aware that it's not the growing season, if they're still putting out growth, and they're because your home is warm and it's none the wiser, you can completely fertilize because it's not aware, right? But if you do have plants like I have a lot of plants that are by my windowsills, I would not fertilize those because the temperature is drastically lowered. They're getting natural light. They're not getting grow lights. So the amount of light they're getting is nowhere near what they would get in the growing season. So I would not bother. So I would not. A lot of my alocasias have gone into hibernation mode. They've gone dormant. They've died back to the corms. We actually had one of our silver dragons, because we have a few, but one of our silver dragons alocasias, it died back to its corm, right? Because in the fall it started getting cold and it was like, nope, I'm out. And now it started putting out a leaf. Because we moved it from the living room to the kitchen, and our kitchen is much warmer. And it woke up. so I was like, oh, okay. But like we have a few polys, and two of our polys went dormant, and so they went back to the corm. But yeah, the silver dragon decided to wake up, so I guess it was a short sleep. And then yes, and then Linda, yes, about the problem with the stickiness on the bay plants. Yes, yes. So that is honeydew. So if any one of you is feeling stickiness on your leaves, that is honeydew. I'm very, very sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that is honeydew. And so that means that there is something that is currently eating your plant, is messing with your plant. Jamie, can you use microfiber cloth or a duster to clean leaves? Absolutely. The only problem with that is I would not recommend cross-contamination. So don't clean multiple plants with the same cloth. And so I sometimes, if it's a really larger leaf that I just didn't pay attention to for a while or something, and it's like super dusty, I'll use like a paper towel, or I'll use a microfiber cloth. But for like my smaller leaves, like these, I really just use my hands, or I run them under the faucet real quick to give them a little clean. This anthurium put out a new leaf, and it's such a weird shape. It's just for you to see. They're supposed to look like this. It's such a weird shaped leaf. It's not damaged. It's just, I don't know. It's just a funky leaf. But yes, I just either like kind of rinse them off. Or if they're tiny enough, if it's a really tiny leaf, I literally, I kind of I have like a little thing with water. I just do that. But yeah, you can use a duster, especially if they're bigger leaves, something like a bird of paradise or a banana plant, right? If you want to use like a cloth or a duster, you totally can. It's just that if you potentially have an infestation, right? If you were to use that same duster on another plant, you could be cross-contaminating. And it's not just pests. Plants have viruses as well, and they're passed by touch. So if a leaf touches another leaf, poof, that's it. That's all they needed. That's how mosaic virus spreads. And so just be aware of that. So you can cross-contaminate that way. Synth, my panda plant is going crazy with the new leaves, but hardly has any little brown dots. Yes, at the edge of the leaves. It's in a south window on the window ledge and is getting a lot more light now that the ash is naked as a jaybird. and how do I get it to have more of the little dots? That was great. Ash is naked as a jaybird. Yeah, we have two ashes in front of our windows as well, and this week that was it. I'm in charge of sweeping all those leaves, and so it's like I was like, please just stop. So I always tell my husband it's during the winter that I get to work out my arms, because I'm constantly sweeping, because these giant ash trees that are absolutely beautiful, but whew, it's work. But they finally lost all of their leaves in the last week. We had a lot of really windy days, and finally. So yeah, the amount of light you get is spectacular. Now with the little black the little black dots on the panda plant, yes. So I mean, a lot of that is sometimes also it's just like the grow lights, right? The grow lights are put very close to the panda plants, like when in the nurseries, they're kind of put on these shelf systems. So the grow lights are really close. And so that definitely makes them more pronounced. And so even when we have them in a really bright spot, like I have my panda plants, I have one here in my western window. It still has some brown on the tips, but the ones that I have in my southeast window, they're green. So yeah, it's hard to kind of get them back. Sometimes it might come back with the intensity of like the summer light, but really maybe having them like under grow lights might bring them back. It's yeah, even when you give them a little bit more light, if it's yeah, they really in the nurseries, and they really do a lot with these specific grow lights. So the different waves of light will generate different colors to come out to trigger them to go into flower. So the different spectrums of light. I don't think people realize how much light really comes into play, you know, in sharing and showing like these really cool characteristics of the plants that we love. And yeah, it's really important in the plant industry, having, you know, there is literally like rooms that there's no windows or anything, and it's just like a specific light, and they'll basically bathe the plants in red light, like for peace lilies, so they all are triggered to bloom, and then they're ready to be shipped out, right, for sale. And then people get them and they're like, well, why? I've had it for 3 years and it's not blooming. And it's just that sometimes it's very hard to get them to bloom indoors, and they're literally in like an induced, they're triggered to bloom in nurseries. And also some nurseries just, you know, they have all, it's not only the light, but they have everything, the temperature is just right, the air circulation, the humidity, right, everything is just right to get them to do that. What kind of care do you, so Hank asks, what kind of care do you recommend for banana plants? Yeah, they like a nice, you know, well draining soil. They need a lot of bright light. They need a lot of humidity as well. So if anybody here has any experience with like banana plants or birds of paradise, if they don't get enough humidity, their leaves start to fray and it just looks terrible. Let me see if I can show you real quick what that looks like. So like let me see, maybe bird of paradise, leaf, low humidity. Let's try. Yeah, I mean, this isn't the worst that can happen, but you can start to see splits, but it's when it starts to fray. Oof, this is a sad one. But literally this, it's like the seams of the leaves start to oh, this is a good one. So you can see that the seams of the plant basically kind of just fall apart, and the leaf just collapses. So sometimes this can happen on each of the little, like the margin lines, like all of the veins, and it just looks like a bunch of fingers, right? Because they're kind of frayed along the edge. Sometimes the leaves will literally just break. So they can be very sensitive. So if you have a home that doesn't maintain a really kind of constant humidity, or is very drafty, then just keep in mind that maybe the banana plant or bird of paradise, which is in the same family, might not be the best plant, because it can just, it won't look very great. The plant won't be very happy. It might survive, but it won't be very happy. But yeah, with these guys, again, bright light. You can let them dry. They want to dry but not be completely bone dry between waterings. And but yeah, but I think the biggest thing, and you want to evenly saturate them when you do water them. So but the biggest things in terms of their care is the amount of light that they're getting. They need a lot of light. So if you have an apartment, like for me, we have 10-foot ceilings, but these guys can get really tall. So once they get up to a certain point, it's not, you know, the windows are slightly lower, right? So it's just not going to work. So it wouldn't be the best thing. And then I literally know people that have these like banana plants. They grow too tall for their apartment, and then they try to sell them to someone who has a taller ceilings, and then get a new one and start over again. So, you know, they can grow really quickly if they're in the great, in really nice environments. But then, yeah, they can easily hit your ceiling, and then yeah, you know, you have to make a decision there, to keep it, or what. um with the and Hank also asks, what about the Chinese evergreen? So these are the aglaonemas, and so also known like silver bays. These are a type of variety. They're really easy. They don't like super bright light, but there are aglaonemas that are really brilliantly colored, and they do appreciate a little bit more light than their green alternatives. And so if anyone has no idea what in the world the Chinese evergreen is, this is what we're discussing. It's the aglaonema. So here we go. So we can see there's a lot of green varieties. These that have the pinks and the reds, they do appreciate a little bit more light. Just a little bit more light. They can burn in really intense light. They also, I mean, they like a nice kind of stable humidity. They can survive, you know, be okay in like 40% humidity, like 40 to 50%. They prefer a little bit more humid though, because they will start to crisp up. In terms of watering, these guys, they are slightly thirstier than so you might find them kind of being watered at the same time as your peace lilies, which might end up being about every 7 days or so. Yeah, they're pretty easy going. It's just if it's too dry in your space, they will start to crisp up. And the same if you put them in a really high light situation, that's really intense light, like a western window or a southern window, they might crisp up on you. But these are plants that can be kept more in the interior of the home as well. So they, you know, you can keep them like on dining tables and things like that, on your mantle, where they're getting kind of that straight on light, but more in the interior of the home, and they do great. They're great office plants too, that they do really well in like fluorescent light. Things like peace lilies do well in offices, like pothos, they do really well in offices, dracaenas as well. So those are like more low maintenance plants that they do a lot better in those types of situations when that's the yeah, when that's the type of environment. But they're really beautiful. So I would recommend these. These are toxic though. So aglaonemas are toxic. They're in the aroid family. So they're related to plants like philodendrons and monsteras and like Dieffenbachias. So quite beautiful, but be careful if you have pets, you know, or young children. And they can flower for you. So they get just like the like monsteras and philodendrons and peace lilies, they get this spathe like flower. And so you can get them. These are they actually flower a little bit more readily than something like a monstera or a philodendron would in a household. So you might actually get these to flower for you. Let me put this guy back before he falls off the side of my desk. 1 second. Hey, Mozart. Oh, no. Sorry, Mozart is trying to, Mozart's trying to step on my, I was working on miniatures. And so hold on, let me stop the share. So I like to make little, so he was about to step on them. I have a few here that I was working on, but I love to make little miniature dioramas of like little apothecaries and things like that, that I put together.
So
And
cute.
so, thank you.
Yeah.
I love making these. And so I had made a bunch and I gave them away to my colleagues when I was at the conference. Um, and so I've been trying to make time to make more of these because I really love these. Like I make these little these little
Cute.
Oh,
so
right.
like little magnets and things like that. And it's definitely a nice way to decompress.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
so but of course the cats decide, oh yeah, I'm just gonna step on everything. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We bought them a new treat. I've never used this before, but it's a hit. And it's a silver vine. So I'd never used silver vine. I did not know if the cats would like it, and they were going nuts. So I know our cats definitely like so the catnip, that's actually inherited. The attraction, right, to catnip, that reaction that they get is inherited. So all four of our cats obsessed with catnip. Only one of our cats likes valerian root, which is another plant that cats really like. But they all seem to respond to the silver vine. So it's like a little chunk and they attach it to a string and then they just put this little toy. And I don't know. I have no idea. They like it. So it's a new plant that I didn't know existed that cats really love. And yeah, I threw
What's
it
the name
down.
of the root again? What's the name
Oh,
of the root?
silver vine. Oh, the root is valerian root.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Valerian root is wonderful. Also, for some people, it's very, for more people, it's effective for sleep. But there are exceptions. Some people, when they have valerian, it actually feels like they had like caffeine. It works as a stimulant. So be wary of that if you've never worked with with valerian root. It also has a very strong smell. So yeah, if you order it, it's strong. Um, but it's great. It's great. It's a great tea for folks if you have trouble sleeping. It takes you to kind of build it up over a couple days for it to really take effect, but it's great. But yeah, it does help me. It helps me sleep, but I know it can be a stimulant for some folks. Yep, exactly, Jen, exactly. Yeah, not all cats have that gene. Um, and Linda, yes. Oh gosh. No, the conference went wonderfully. I was insanely nervous. Insanely nervous. Oh my gosh. I just remember thankfully there was a Starbucks right next to the conference center. And when I was talking and I kept, taking like a sip of my matcha and my hand is just like this. Like I could just see my cup like vibrating. It was nuts because I thought I was going to teach in a little conference room and then they told me, oh no, you're teaching in the amphitheater. And I was like, no, I'm not. And that was, and I've, here online, it's different, right? Online, and in person, I've done classes for like up to like 50 people or so, and that's fine. But an amphitheater, that was just, yeah. I got through it and I got really great feedback. So a lot of folks really enjoyed it. And I had so many people afterwards, like really excited about it. So I was happy that they enjoyed it, but I was screaming internally the whole time. So I was glad. I felt so much relief. I couldn't eat leading up to because I did two talks. I did one that was outside. That was fine. But the second one was the one I was really nervous about. And I could not eat. And then the talk was at 3:30. And so I gave the talk and I literally finished the talk and I got so hungry. I was like, I need food right now. I could not eat leading up to it. Linda, to me, valerian root smells like stinky feet. Yes, it's a very strong, pungent smell. But yes. But it went really well. I was very, very grateful for the opportunity. I will not be signing up for another conference for a while. I need to let my adrenals, kind of calm down, because I found out I was doing the conference like in June. So I was just in such a state of nervousness, working on it, because it was a 90-minute presentation. So yeah. So so it was just like a lot of pressure. So I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that anytime soon. I'm gonna give myself a break from conferences for a while. But it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And I got to meet a lot of folks, a lot of colleagues that I only know through Zoom, and I was finally able to meet them in the flesh. So that was very lovely. But yeah. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. It's seriously always a joy.
It is fun too.
I really love spending my Monday with all of you. It's so cool. It's just a great way to start off the week. I truly appreciate it. And I'm glad we can just hop on, talk about plants. I can take questions. I really love this. And thank you, Deanna.
You're welcome.
You
My
so much.
pleasure.
And and thank you, Synth. Yeah, it's always a joy. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. I hope that you have a really lovely week. And I hope you'll join us next week. And so please stay safe. And have a great one, everyone. It's
Right. Next week's the
fun.
Thanksgiving holiday, Jocelyn, not affecting your schedule.
No.
Okay.
I will be here on Monday.
Okay, great. Good.
Yes.
See you then. Great.
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
You're very welcome. I'll see you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.